Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Women Leading into the Future webinar for December. My name is Linda Gale, and I'm really excited to be sharing with you tonight. I'll apologise straight up. There's a little bit of an echo in this room. I'm actually travelling at the moment, and I've got this amazing big training room behind me, but it's empty, so there's an echo. So I do apologise for that straight up. Hopefully it won't get in the way of tonight. So wherever you are, whether it's morning and you're just waking up or it's evening, I hope you have an amazing day. And I'm just going to jump straight on into tonight's topic. And I would want to invite you along the way. If you have any questions or if you have any experiences that you would like to share, please go ahead, jump into the chat box, and I'll do whatever I can to help you or answer any questions. I would love to have a conversation, open that up for everybody. So without further ado, tonight I would like to share with you about how to reduce the pressure of having to do everything by yourself. And I thought this is a great time to start addressing this issue as we get to the end of not only a year, but a decade. Like, how amazing. The last 10 years have just flown. So I want to share with you on that tonight. Firstly, I'd like to give a shout out also, firstly, for you taking the time to share on this webinar. I appreciate that you're investing in yourself and listening and hopefully sharing your experiences. But I also want to put out my gratitude to be a part of this amazing Women Leading into the Future team. You know, working with some beautiful women from around the world coming together, and that's the reason why we're able to be here on this webinar tonight, from the support that we've all jumped in. So coming to the end of 2019, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm obviously starting to think about what will 2020 hold? What is the beginning of this decade going to be about, and starting to plan? And, whether you're in business or working in your career or running your family, whatever style of leadership or whatever position of leadership you are in your life right now, and wherever you are, whatever you have in your world, you are a leader in different parts of it. And that's one of the things that us ladies in this Women Leading to the Future group, we talk about often. Whether we're a mum with a big family or a small family, or a single mum, whether we're a sister or a partner, an employer, an employee, we all have roles to play, and within each of these roles, leadership lies. And so a big part of what we want to bring and support other ladies with is identifying and acknowledging your leadership roles and your leadership skills, because many of us don't do that. Many of us just get on with doing what we're doing, and that's how life is, right? We show up, we do it, and it's no big deal. And the fact is that it is a huge deal. So looking forward into 2020, how can we start to take the pressure off ourselves? How can you start to think what's going to be in for 2020 and the decade in front of us, and how can you make that easier in your world? So tonight I want to focus on building teams, essentially. Now, that could be building teams in business, of course, but it's also building teams within the community or within the family world that you live in. They say on a family perspective, it takes a village to raise a child, and I'm a firm believer in that. Without friendships and connections and help and support, I don't think any of us really could do that. So whatever context that you might be thinking about when I mention the word teams, how can we apply this to your world? And again, I want to invite you at any time. I'm going to be checking back and forth into the chat. The beautiful Mindy Stern is in the background here helping me run Webinar Jam, because I'm not an expert there. So I'm sure if I miss anything, she'll help me out as well. So I want to say thank you for that, Mindy. But to jump straight on in, I'm just going to throw over to some presentations here so we can have a look together. Oops, that's not where we want to go. I love it. I love it when technology works for me. I'm just going to bring that back. Perfect. I've already done some training with some amazing people today, and I'm training trainers, and I said to them, never ever in my 20 plus years of teaching people, interestingly enough, have I had any single session go absolutely perfectly to plan. And as a matter of fact, if something doesn't happen, I start to go, what's going on here? And it's actually taught me some of the best lessons in my life about having to be able to reset and adjust and go with the flow, because things happen that we cannot always control, like that. I queued up the slides to start at the beginning. Obviously, I didn't do that right. Let's move forward. All we can do is move on. But, too often, and I used to be like this, and maybe you can relate, too often we tend to beat ourselves up too much. So I hope that you can relate to that. I'm going to jump onto this. So tonight, it's all about how to reduce the pressure of having to do everything by yourself in all those areas of your world, whether it be business, career, family, home, or personally just for you. So the first part that I want to, or the first, three sections that I want to focus on with you tonight is number one, the fast track to business success. Now, I'm just going to time out there. If business isn't something that you're in your world right now, please transfer that word into family or relationship or partnership, because it's just how do we get success in areas of our life. Doesn't matter where we apply it. The things that I'm going to share with you tonight cross over in all different areas anyway. So I encourage you to take what works for you, what sounds good for you, and apply it to all different areas. And just on that point, if there's anything that I share with you tonight, and if it sounds like it's a good fit, please go ahead, share it and use it in your life. But on the same level, if there's anything that doesn't make sense for you or isn't a right fit, please let it go. I'm not here to teach, I'm not here to preach, I'm just here to share some perspectives that I've found work, but it's about how you can adapt them and use them in your world. So we're going to look at the fast track to business success or family, and that's about identifying teams and how we can build a team or a community around us for that support. The second topic I want to work on tonight is looking at what simple models to use that attract to build that right team. Whether it's within your family, whether it's within your team, whether it's within your workplace, how can we bring people around us and have that support and encourage that in others? And the last part I want to focus on with you tonight is how to motivate your team or that community or the people around you for long-term results. And that's it. That was a big lesson for me in the 20 plus years that I've been in business, learning how to keep that momentum going over a long time. So I'm just going to jump straight in. Again, if you have any questions at any time, please throw into the chat. So the first section is looking at simple models to attract and build the right team. So I'll put this into three different categories, and of course, if this is for home, how do we do it traditionally? How would we do it from an entrepreneurial or a modern woman in a working world? How would we do that? We'll look at those things. So on a traditional level, if I start with business, on a traditional level, it's usually the employees. We pay people for their time, and then we have an expectation that they're going to show up and they're going to perform and they're going to do everything like that. And that's the traditional model, and it works fine. It's not necessarily the right model for all businesses, or depending on the business you're at and the stage that you're in with your business, it might not fit like that. The same as if we transfer that out and think about in a family role, in a partnership, in a relationship role. Traditionally, within that familiar role, the first one or two main people is yourself and your partner, if you have a partner involved. So most of that work and getting things done falls primarily to you and or your partner. So it's working out what you can do, how you can best use your time, how you can keep a little bit of balance in your life along the way, and how do we make this fit better? Especially if you have children involved, and as they grow, their needs and wants are going to be different. How can you fit that in? And again, my personal experience and my experience with a lot of the ladies that I've worked with over the years, we are experts, absolute experts at putting everything else in front of us. There's a list to do that's a mountain high, and we'll just keep on plowing through. And it's okay, I'm all right. And usually the first time that we'll admit that things maybe aren't all right is when we're almost ready to drop. And it's the same in the workplace. I see so many people with their teams, and they'll hire employees, which is amazing. But then they'll micromanage, or they don't know how to delegate properly, or they end up doing all the work. And then they're running around stressing about this. So there's a model around that. So if that particular traditional model suits your current workplace or your business or your family, it's looking at how can you make slight changes, nothing too big, just something small that will make it run smoothly, will be more efficient to work in with you. So that's the first traditional role there. The second one I've put there as a heading is entrepreneurial. And so when we look at building teams, again, I'm going to start from a business perspective. Entrepreneurial, you know, the system that I work on is looking at what I want to do, but looking at what I can outsource or what I can delegate if I have an internal team. And the biggest lesson that I ever learned was being able to let go of that control, being able to let go and actually let another person do whatever's been outsourced to them or delegated to them. And I think the biggest part is letting go of that need for perfectionism. You know, it's really our worst enemy. And I believe at some point we've all been conditioned to having to be the best and having that ideal of perfectionism. And, you know, I'm yet to meet the perfect situation or perfect person, and yet we hold such high standards to ourselves. So it's learning where can we outsource. And again, if I bring that back into, you know, a home or a community perspective, it's bringing the people around you. How can you get that support? How can you allow them? You know, I look at, you know, some close friends of mine, if I think about them, I've seen them struggle in a family where they have quite a large family. And I've seen them try to do everything on their own. And I've seen members of their family offer support and try to take some of the burden off. And for far too long, they, you know, we've got it, we're all right, we can manage, we can do it. And, you know, they'd scrimp and save. And it wasn't until, you know, an almost crisis point occurred that they actually said, hey, yeah, we need some help. So it's a common pattern, whether it be in the business world, whether it be in our private world, our relationships, socially. We seem to, as women, not all of us, but most of us as a broad term, we seem to keep pushing ourselves to our absolute limits often before we learn to say, please help, or we learn to accept support and have that belief that it's actually very strong and courageous to accept support or to have support. So going back to a business perspective, when I look at entrepreneurial, yeah, I actually struggled with this for a long time. For many years, I'd get people to come in, and I was so lucky. You know, I'd often have people want to come and volunteer to work and help me in my business. And for many years, I would sabotage this because I'm like, why would you want to do that? I'm not understanding it. And it was about defining my personal definition of exchange. And I don't know if you can relate to this, and if you can, please pop something in the comment. I'd love to form this into a bit of a conversation. But my definition of exchange, what I hadn't realised for almost 15 years, was my definition that I had from that of when I was an employee, that I exchange my time for money, therefore that's what brings it value. And when I moved into the entrepreneurial world and people wanted to actually come and, you know, intern in my business, I would just feel this immense guilt. And then I would sabotage it because I'm like, why would they want to do that? I have nothing. And I didn't feel comfortable giving them tasks and actually taking some of the burden off because I didn't think that I was offering a fair exchange. And so what I had to learn, and it was, you know, I think it was the third or fourth person, I can't believe that I even had 3 or 4 people before I learnt this, was they said, you know what though, what I'm learning, what you're allowing me to be part of and what you're teaching me would have cost me thousands of dollars and years to go and learn. So the exchange it's kind of a shortcut for me. And again, I did not hear that at the very beginning. I didn't want to hear that. I didn't feel comfortable. So it took a few people, you know, and I was really blessed that I had a very lovely lady actually sit me down and go, listen, you're not hearing. The exchange that I'm getting is of great value. And that's when I learned to redefine my definition of exchange. It doesn't always have to be time for money. There are many varieties, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment when we look at how to build teams. So the last section here is what I call the modern model, and that's all about collaboration. You know, and again, one of the biggest lessons, you know, I live in a beautiful part of northern Queensland here in Australia, and it's a small country town that's grown rapidly, you know, over the last 10 years. But I always struggled because I always have this want to collaborate. I don't see working with other people as myself as a competitor, I see it as co-creators. And it took quite a while in this country town thinking, in the business thinking, I guess, for people to trust that. You know, for a long time, people would say, but what are you after? What do you want? What are you going to take? And I'm like, I don't understand. You know, you've got these strengths in your business. I have these strengths in my business. Why can't we put them together? There's more than enough people that we can support. There's way too many people for me to have to help on my own. This is going to be great for everybody. And it was that spirit of collaboration. But that was one of the hurdles I found, and you might relate to that too. One of the hurdles was looking at people trusting that, you know, trusting that I didn't have an ulterior motive in that. So the spirit of collaboration, which again, you know, we can transfer that into our work. If you have a job, you can transfer that into your working world. You know, look for people that you can work with and pair up with and support each other. I'm actually running a program. I'm in a remote community this week, and I'm running a program for some clients. And you know, one of the things I was saying to them is, how nice would it be if you went back to work and you were able to rebuild relationships with people, so that, you know, all of a sudden, if you had a spare 5 or 10 minutes, you were able to help them catch up and not be so busy, or vice versa. I said, how good would that be? And we're talking about that level of collaboration, you know, just amongst colleagues. How can we make life easier for ourselves? But again, if we take this now into perspective of, you know, your family life or your community or a social life, look at the collaborations. Where can you find support? Where, you know, who do you have that you can trust? Who can you reach out to that maybe you've never even considered? Or if you can relate to this, because again, I had to learn about this. Many people over the years have offered support. You know, if you ever need anything, just ask. And for many years, do you know what I did? Absolutely nothing. I would struggle, and I would be, you know, stressed, and I would be overwhelmed, and be trying to juggle everything, that there was no way that I was going to reach out and say, hey, I'll take that help, please. Yes, thank you. And yet, if people reached out to us, my husband and I said, can you help us? We're like, sure, what do you need? And it was like, again, Linda, learning to prioritise. So I'd like to introduce you across any of that, you know, whether it be a traditional model or an entrepreneurial model or a modern model, when it comes to building a team in your life for business or for your workplace, your family, your community, any of those environments. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce you to a term called noble selfishness. You may have heard of it before, but it's noble selfishness. And what noble selfishness is about is, firstly, when we hear someone say selfish, please let me know if you relate to this. Most of us think that is a negative thing. You know, people are selfish. They're more, you know, in tune to themselves and what they can get out of life, and that's generally how we interpret that. But by adding that word noble at the beginning, it changes the whole connotation. Now, I'm going to give you an example rather than try to describe or define it. If I give you this example instead, noble selfishness. If you've ever flown on a plane, please let me know if you've flown on a plane. Pop a comment in there. Fly with me. But one of the first things they do before we leave the tarmac, we sit in those seats, we put our luggage away, we strap ourselves in. Before we're leaving, the beautiful stewardesses or the stewards give us the safety talk. And what's something that they always tell us in the safety talk? They say to us, in the event of an emergency, masks will drop down from the ceiling. Make sure that you fit your own mask first, and they always give us that amazing demonstration, before you do anyone else, or before you help anyone else. Now, that's an example of noble selfishness. So I'm going to ask you to picture this. You're sitting on the plane right next to one of the people that you love more than anything in life. Somebody that you would jump in front of a bus for, there's no question. So as you're flying, you hit a bit of turbulence, and all of a sudden, the masks drop down from the ceiling. Can I ask you if, you know, all of a sudden the masks drop down, the oxygen's being sucked out, you're finding it hard to breathe, everyone's panicking, it's noisy, it's screaming, your loved one next to you is having a hard time putting their mask on. So the first thing that you would go to do is to grab them and help put their mask on. But as you're doing that, you start to run out of oxygen. And before you can fit the mask onto the person you love most in the world, you stop. You've got no breath left. So wouldn't it be more noble to take a moment of selfishness to fit your own mask first so that you had enough oxygen that you could then turn to the person you love best in this world and have the oxygen and the thought of mind to actually help them? That's an example of noble selfishness. And that's something that I encourage everyone, not just us ladies, but everyone on this planet. We need to practice it more often. You must fill your own tanks first so that you have enough fuel and enough energy to continue nurturing and supporting and being there for your family, for your friends, for your clients, for your colleagues, for your employees, whoever it is in this world that you support. You have to fuel your own tank before. So whatever of these models, if any of these models make sense to you, whether it be the traditional one where you exchange time for money, which is absolutely great, if that fits your world, or, you know, it might be you hiring in help into your home. It might be hiring a babysitter or a chef or a cleaning lady or anything like that. If that model works for you, fabulous. Maybe it's the entrepreneurial where you'll outsource this and you might barter and bargain your way through to get the support you need or the team that you need. Or it could be that spirit of collaboration. You know, redefining your definition of exchange, but to overall and overarch all of that is practicing noble selfishness. So I hope that made sense. It's an overview. Thank you, Stephanie and Beth. Thank you for joining. Love it. Noble selfishness equals ultimate self-care. Absolutely, Steph. Thank you so much for that comment. Steph, took a long time to realise asking people for help is a gift to them. Absolutely. As you give them the gift of feeling like they're contributing to someone other than themselves, that is one of the most precious gifts that you can give. I 100% thank you for bringing that up. That's amazing. It truly is. To make someone feel useful and helping in your world. Beth says, whenever I let someone else do things, I end up having to do it over myself. Ask yourself who can support you, but also ask who you can support. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining in the conversation, ladies. Please keep it coming. If there's any questions, if there's anything that I can help you with, absolutely. And, you know, Steph, I'm right there with you. It took me too long to realise the value of asking for help because that's actually a gift for somebody else. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So the next piece that I want to share with you tonight, if I can, yes, I've got it to work, thankfully, is working on how to fast track your business success. And again, feel free to exchange the word business. It might be your family success. It might be relationships, socially, within your community. But it's all about how can we achieve the results we want with the least amount of cost, the least amount of time, and the least amount of headache. Because I believe that we're not here to work hard. I believe we're here to work, but to enjoy. So the first part there I've got is work versus leverage. Now, what I'm meaning by that, essentially, is mindset. So again, I'm going to start from the context of being in business or an employee, you know, in the workplace or career world. When we think about the word work, you know, again, you might agree with this or you might relate to this. I relate it to exchanging time for money. And, you know, if I go into a work mindset and someone says, Linda, I need you to do this, I will just follow that instruction and do that. But in my own business, you know, that mindset is kind of hard because if I don't give myself instruction, what am I following? I find that I can waste time if I fall into that. But the whole point of work versus leverage, the term leverage here is such a powerful thing. Because when we're working, we're exchanging one thing for another. But when we're leveraging, we're looking at what resources do we have available? What support mechanisms could we reach out for? And how could we leverage those resources or those mechanisms to help us achieve our results faster or achieve our results better or achieve our results with a bigger impact? What can we leverage? And again, there's a bit of a theme behind tonight, because this part of leveraging also is an encouragement for you to reach out. It's an encouragement to, put it out there. What do you need? What's going on? How can I help? All that sort of stuff. But it's that mindset. And I personally, and again, you might relate to this, I find if I go into that work mentality, I'm literally, exchanging this for that. Whereas if I go into leverage, then there's a better outcome. There's something bigger there. It's not just that, it's that big picture rather than that small picture. So it's looking at your life from out here rather than just here. How can you leverage the resources around you to help balance out your world? Practicing noble selfishness is a great start. Leverage. So the next part in fast tracking your business success or your family or home success is identifying your role. And again, as women, we're amazing at not only taking on our role, but taking on that person's role and that person's role and that person's role. Oh, it's got to be done. Someone has to do it, right? No, we have to stop that thinking. And again, as Stephanie mentioned, I want to apply that gift analogy. We should identify what our role is, whether it be as a parent or a sister or a partner or an employee or an entrepreneur or a world leader or whatever it might be. Identify your role and then leave space for somebody else to have a role. My background, and I apologise, I didn't introduce myself very well, but my background is in human behaviour. I actually grew up in a small town. My parents owned a country pub or a bar, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. And so I grew up around people my whole life. I've watched people, I've studied people, I've researched behaviour, and now I love it because I teach it. I live it, I love it. And it's interesting, the one thing I know about humans is we all crave, more than anything on this planet, is to be seen and to be heard. And the reason we crave that is because it ensures, or it certainly raises the percentage of our ability to survive. So if someone sees you, or if someone, if someone calls your name and you've been heard, noticed or listened to, it has a calming effect on our brain. So by you taking the lead and identifying your role in all areas of your life, what is your role if you're a parent, or as the female parent or the main parent or the secondary parent, whatever it might be? What is your role as a partner? What is your role as a career woman? Or what is your role as an entrepreneur on a small business or a big business, or all those different aspects of your life? It's imperative that not only do you identify your role so that you can not burn out and you can create a level of balance, but also so you can give the gift of assigning or inviting other people to take their role in those parts. You might have employees, let them have their role. You might have a partner, let them have their role in the family or in the partnership. Your friends, your family, your community, your social world, your business. Because every time you allow someone to step up and fill a role, you're allowing them to be seen and to be heard. And that's what every human being on the base level, it's what we all crave. If I had more time to go into the psychology around that, I absolutely would. I've been talking about that all day. I love it. But if you can just think of that, identifying your role, firstly, it's so that you don't burn out. We're very good at that. And I've had to learn that the hard way. I'm an amazing starter. I can start projects. I've got gusto. I can do it. And then something comes up and something comes up and something comes up, and then all of a sudden my energy drops and I'm like, I'm overwhelmed and I'm struggling to complete. And it's only recently where I've been able to re-achieve more balance in that and bring in support and give people roles. And the more that I give them, the more that they want. And I'm actually going to talk about that on the last point that I'm going to share with you tonight, because there's an amazing formula around giving someone a role and owning your role. And the other part of identifying your role and owning your role is, often as women and as nurturers, we tend to take the back seat. We tend to put everybody else up front and we step back. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that as long as it's not permanent. There are times that you should step up. There actually are times that you deserve to step up. And that's where the problem is, or the challenge is. Because often in the roles that we play, in the women in the world, we forget to acknowledge who we are. we forget to acknowledge what we do for the people around us. And we forget to acknowledge what we do in the world. And that's dangerous. That's how women fall down. And that's how women don't survive. And that's a dangerous place. It doesn't help the people in your life. It doesn't help the people that you support. So identifying your role, taking back your power and acknowledging how amazing you are, what you do, what you don't do. You know, it's interesting. My husband actually was instrumental in helping me realise that I always used to do that. And it was just in my own little self-talk. And again, maybe you might relate to this, maybe you might notice this about yourself. But for me, if somebody asked me to do something that was within my power, I'd go, sure, no problem, that's easy. That's no big deal. And it wasn't until, you know, a fair bit of time went by, my husband said, you need to stop saying that. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, stop saying, you know, it's too easy. He said, because while it might be easy for you, it's not easy for that person, and that's why they've asked you to help them. But every time you say, oh yeah, no worries, it's too easy, it's no big deal, you're devaluing what you do. And you're devaluing how you help other people. He said, stop it. And I went, you know, I'm like, oh my God, you know, there was such wisdom in those words. And it took me a little time to fully integrate that, but he was 100% right. One of the biggest crimes against humanity, or in this case of tonight, one of the biggest crimes us women do to ourselves is we stop acknowledging who we are, what we do. And life isn't always easy. Just because, you know, you might be able to whip your house into shape and, you know, run a business and run a team and help people out and be social and support your community, that takes a lot of effort, a lot of control, a lot of organisation, all these skills to be who you are for the people around you. And by not acknowledging yourself, you're not doing yourself any favours, but more importantly, you know, if you're a mother or if you have children around you or people that follow you, and trust me, as a leader, I'm telling you, even though I may not know you, as a leader, people are watching and people are following, I guarantee it. A lot of the time when we don't even think so. But what you're doing by not acknowledging yourself, you're teaching the other people in your world not to acknowledge themselves. So I'm going to ask you, if you have a daughter or a son or a niece or a nephew or, you know, friend or kids around you, especially in those impressionable ages, and you know, they watch you. If you aren't acknowledging yourself, you're teaching our future generations not to do the same. So if you do have a daughter or a niece or any young impressionable women in your world, would you be happy for them to grow up putting a dampener on their confidence by not acknowledging themselves and then passing that on to the next generation and the next generation? That's been happening to us for eons. This is the time, and this is one of the reasons that myself and this amazing group of ladies from around the world, this is one of the reasons why we're stepping in for ourselves, and we're stepping up because it's time to acknowledge who we are as women and what we can achieve. And our biggest mission is to be able to create a pathway and bring everyone along with us. Let's bring women out. It's nothing against men, because I love men and they're quite welcome along the journey. But in modern world, usually the men don't have any problems stepping up and stepping into roles as much as us women. And that's why we've come together to go, you know what, there's greatness, and there's greatness needed from men and women. Let's help women find the way. Let us find our way. And so stepping into your role, acknowledging who you are, owning it, you know who you are and own her and love that and be proud of it. Teach our generations coming through that that's okay. Can you imagine if we acknowledged and owned who we are, and we taught that to the boys and girls in those impressionable years? How would that have an effect on the bullying that goes on in today's world, whether it be on social media or in the school ground or wherever? If we could teach the generations of tomorrow to own who they are, to acknowledge who they are, to be okay with who they are, what kind of future are we going to set up for the world then? How amazing could that be? But the fact is, it has to start somewhere, and we're it. And the time is now, and your time is now, and our time is now, and we want to be here to help you and everyone else do that. Our time is now. So the last piece I want to do under this section is what I call removing the bottlenecks. So any kind of bottle, we know that the shape of it comes up and the neck is quite. So what I have found through my own experience and then working with many, many clients is often we are the biggest bottleneck in our world. Now, whether it be in your business, if you have a business, usually the biggest limiter is the most important or the most educated or whatever it is person in any business. So if you're the top echelon leader in your business and you have fears or insecurities or there's things you don't like to do, then you're going to bottleneck that. So the best way to do that is to remove maybe yourself or anyone else in that role where they're bottlenecking or not achieving. Just how do we move it? How do we move around that? It might be in the family world. It might be, my dad, God love him, when I moved out of home, every week for years, he would ring me every Friday night. And I worked out, it took me a little bit, that he'd ring me at 8:30 on a Friday night because in his mind, he would think, well, she won't be going out, she'll be at home. And I loved him for that. But that was also, for me personally, it turned into a bottleneck because I didn't want to disappoint him. And I didn't want him to think, badly of me, not that he ever would have. But so I stopped myself from going out or socialising so much because I wanted to not disappoint somebody. And so again, one of the afflictions that we have in this modern day world, and it's not just the modern day, but it's very here and now, is these heavy expectations that we put upon ourselves to be who we think other people think we should be, to act in a way that we think they'll expect us to act. But what that does is it acts like a bottleneck. It actually weighs you down. It puts limits on what you can achieve. The same as if I think as a parent or in the community, how many people do you know? How many women, and I'm sure that you know at least one, how many women do you know that, always need to appear like they're together? They're well looked after, they look perfect, their houses look clean, their cars clean, their kids look good, they're here on time, they turn up with all the stuff, and you think, wow, on the outside their life is amazing. And look, it might be. But I also know that there are women that turn up like that who have turned themselves inside out to show up. They're walking on eggshells, they're overwhelmed and they're stressed, but they need to look the part. And that in itself creates a bottleneck because while we're not allowing ourselves to be real, we're limiting our ability, we're limiting our capacity. And that, again, doesn't help anybody. So I'm going to suggest to you as we come into the quiet time of Christmas, hopefully you'll have, a couple of days just to unwind and relax somewhere in there, maybe with a coffee or even a bottle of wine if you like. Chill down time, but just sit there and have some, honest thoughts. What areas in your life might you be a bottleneck? What areas in your life that if you removed yourself or maybe changed the way that you approached, could it open it up? Could it let it grow? Could it let it flourish? So just a suggestion, maybe sit back in some quiet time, look at the thoughts that come out, because until we acknowledge it, until we identify it, we can't fix it. So that's my suggestion for you. And of course, some Merry Christmas cheer, but give yourself the gift of some space, time to think, time to reflect. So thank you so much. I'm just going to check the comments here. I'm not the best with technology, so please bear with me. Stephanie, I love your participation. Thank you so much, Steph. Wow, lovely. Love that insight, i.e. the bottleneck, not being authentic. Yeah, it's, so often, we've been conditioned. And I could get really passionate and talk for days on this, so I'm trying to contain myself. But, we have this fear of having to look and be and act a certain way to be accepted. It comes back to that survival need to be seen and heard, right? Accepted, part of. When the truth is, I've yet to meet a human being walking this earth who isn't craving just to be themselves. Maybe you can relate to this. How many times in your life have you, you're going out, whether it be for social or work or business or family or whatever, how many times have you got all dressed up and you've done your hair and you've done your makeup and you think, oh my God, I just don't feel like it. I hate wearing this makeup. I don't want to wear this bra, or that's me. I've got to get, and it's just a hassle. Where really you could just go out as you are, but you have this expectation that you have to look and be a certain way. And just might not be authentic to who you are in that moment, but you'll do it anyway. And, you know, for me, you know, I call that a crime against humanity, a crime against ourselves, but it's a process to learn. So today's maybe just about giving a bit of awareness and tweaking that. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much. Yes, our time is now. Our time is now. Let's grab it, you know. And that's why, again, I'm so excited about us, this Women Leading into the Future. Like, you know, we have our own private calls and we keep up, and it's always who can talk, and we're always wanting to jump in because we're all so full of ideas and energy. And how can we support? What can we do? How can we help? So our time is now. Please jump on this ride with us because we're going. We're on the way. Katarina, thank you. So true and scary. How to get out of it? You know what? It's little piece by little piece. The first step is just, you know, acknowledging. Where am I? What is my role? Where am I a bottleneck? How can I leverage what's going on in my world? It's those things that we need to, you know, that's to me is a big part of self-care. You know, a lot of us ladies will go get our hair done, we'll get our nails done, you know, we'll get all these things done, but how often do we get done just having some time out, you know, what is working for me right now? Am I listening? You know, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with girlfriends where they become ill or they get the flu and they go, I didn't listen to my body. I need to listen. You know, so maybe some of that self-care or that pampering, rather than it all being external, what if we just invested some of that space into what's going on for me right now? Am I okay? Am I bottlenecking areas in my life? And the first step, Katarina, is literally getting some clarity around that. That in itself is a huge step forward. So take the opportunity over Christmas, enjoy a coffee or a wine or whatever it might be for you. Have a group of friends around. Let people join in. And it's amazing what can come out of conversation. But thank you for that. Stephanie, recently I've had a very painful experience with my eldest daughter, which really taught me that if I continue to take responsibility for her, I'm not allowing her to take responsibility for herself. Wow, Stephanie. What a powerful lesson as a mother to recognise about your daughter. That is huge. I love that you said that. You know, the hardest thing I think, especially as a mother, is to watch, you know, your children fall. You know, whenever they fall over, the first thing you want to do is catch them, right? But sometimes the best lesson is to let them fall. Be there to support them, but we have to go out and learn those lessons. So, yeah, letting her take responsibility for herself, absolutely. And I think that is one of the hardest things as women, whether it be for our kids or for ourselves. It's a challenge because it's that nurturing spirit. Thank you. I love these comments. Thank you so much. Awesome. Okay, and if you've got any questions on these points, please throw them in there. I'm going to go to this next section, which is, for me, one of the key pieces. And I have fallen and had to get back up a lot of times in my career and my business around how to motivate your team for long-term results. And, you know, that motivation, it's really hard work to get motivated. You know, it's a lot more investment of time and effort and energy to motivate yourself and the people around you. It's a whole lot easier once they're motivated to keep that momentum going, to keep that happening. And I found myself, you know, I would go into these patterns where I'd work really hard, I'd put all these hours in and put all this energy and, you know, focus and get everything going, and it was hard work, but I'd get momentum. It was like, you know, it was like riding the wave, and all of a sudden the wave starts to crest. It's like, yes, I'm right here, yes. But then I would forget, and when the wave went down, I would go with it, and then I'd be like, oh my God. Actually, I'd like to, if it's okay, I'd like to share a personal story on exactly that happened in my business. And I happily admit that it took me 3 years, painful years, to learn this. But a fair while ago, I set a goal. When I first started out in one of my business, I had a business partner, and she lasted for 12 months. And, you know, we were coaching people and working with people, and she said, Linda, you know, I love people, but I hate working with them. They're hard work. So God love her. You know, she left the business and I just continued on, but she was an amazing partner. But to buy her out of the business, I put myself into the red. So I paid her out with money that I didn't have. And so my goal was, I thought, you know what, in this next 12 months, since I'm in the red in my business, gee, I'd really like if I could just make $50,000, which isn't a lot of money, but back then to me, $50,000 on my own was huge. And I had no idea how I was going to achieve that because I was like $20,000 minus. And so at the time, I didn't know how I did do this, but anyway, I just went head down, worked hard, worked hard, worked hard. I didn't look up for 8 months. I just hard work, work. And I can tell you, I was buggered. I was exhausted. But when I did look up, 8 months before I actually looked at my bank account properly, I didn't hit the $50,000 mark. I missed it. As a matter of fact, I missed it by $100,000. So when I looked at my bank account, I had just shy of $150,000. It was the first time I'd hit 6 figures. I had no clue how I did it. My goal was $50,000 and I had tripled it. And I'm like, oh my God. Honestly, it took me ages to actually believe it. It was black and white in my bank statement, but I still couldn't, how did that happen? I have no idea. But what happened is I'd built all this motivation up. I'm like, go. And when I got to the top of the wave and I hit triple figures, I hit my 6-figure, wow, 150,000, wow. Well, it was 149 something, but it was close. The very next thought that came into my head, and this was like the bottleneck of bottlenecks. It bottlenecked me for 3.5 years, was, oh my God, I am so tired. I'm exhausted. And then in the back of my mind, I really don't want to do that again. I am so tired. And I didn't realise for 3.5 years how damaging those words were. Because for the next 3 years, my business went back to making nothing. I was robbing Peter to pay Paul and scraping, and things weren't rolling. And I'm like, I have no cash flow. I need to go get a job. And I didn't get a job. I don't know how I hang on. I was lucky to have support. But it all came from those little words. And what I had done is, firstly, I broke the momentum, because as soon as I saw the bank account, I just stopped. And it was I wasn't acknowledging what I achieved. But the biggest crime that I committed against myself was that I didn't nurture myself. At no time in that 8-month period did I sit back and go, what do I need right now? What will help me right now? How can I get help? Who can I reach out to for support? I did everything. I was the coffee maker, the garbage taker outer, the appointment maker, the chief sales officer, the chief trainer. I did everything in my business. And sure, I had great financial success, way past what I expected, but there was nothing in my tank. And it's the biggest crime. And as women, we are great at doing that. So like I said, for 3.5 years, it took me to rewrite those words. This is hard work. You know what? It wasn't hard work, but there was a better way to do it. And that's why I wanted to talk to you tonight about how to reduce the pressure of having to do everything by yourself, because we can do a lot of damage in the words that we speak. So it's about leveraging. It's about reaching out for support. It's about allowing people, giving them the gift of being able to work with you. So to keep motivated, the very first thing is having a clear vision and intent. Where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? If this is your point A, where's point B? And get some vision around that. Because if you can share your vision with your team, I'm telling you now, people will always follow a leader that knows where they're going. So if you have crystal clarity and checking in all the time on where you're going to achieve, you might have to change the journey of how you get there along the way. That's fine. Probably it's inevitable, because things will come that you can't, you don't plan for. But if you have a clear vision, I am telling you 100%, with over 25 years of studying human behaviour, people will follow a leader that has a clear vision, that knows where they want to go. Even if they get knocked down and they have to get back up, people will come back with you. So again, invest some time in yourself, find out where you're at, what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and share that with your support crew. Share that with your team. Share that with your friends and family, because I'll help you get there. The other part of keeping your team motivated for the long term is identifying what their wants are. What do they need? You know, one of the biggest things when I work with a lot of corporate clients in the last couple of years. One of the things I say is it's not enough just to employ people to do a job. If you really want to build a beautiful culture, if you really want people to, to get the most out of your people, find out who they are. What are their interests? What do they want to do next? What would they aspire to do? And help them get there. But instead, what I find, a lot of the mindset, especially if I think in the business world, is people are scared to encourage their people or educate their people because what if they leave me? I'm going to help them and they'll leave. You know what? Most people are going to leave and change jobs in their career or chop and change partnerships anyway. But people will stay with you longer. They'll be motivated and productive and they'll be engaged with you while they're along your journey with you if you take time to find out what do they want. How can I support them beyond just that you're here to do a job and that's all you're here to do? The same in personal relationships, right, in our families. Often I see relationships break down, and some of the time it's where one or both partners in that relationship forget to check in with what the other one wants. What are their needs? And it becomes all about me. So on a human being level, if you take some time to check in with what your team wants, what their needs, and if you can help fulfill that, money cannot buy that level of loyalty. Money cannot buy that level of trust. But if you invest in the people around you, if you invest in your support crew and your team, they will be with you for the long term, and that will keep them motivated. So the last piece that I want to share with you is the term inclusivity. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. If you are, amazing. I love teaching this piece, and I often do. So if you look at the word inclusivity, what does it remind you of? If I look at the word inclusivity, it's about including, right? It looks like the word including. So inclusivity is simply including people in the, and you can fill in the blanks, in their education, in the family, in the team, in their learning, in their whatever. If you include people, as a human being, it's one of the main things that we crave. But there's a little, absolutely, Katarina, thank you, it's including. So there's a formula. And I'm going to, I've just put this up here. I hope that you're able to see it. Excuse me, I'm not super organised. I put up this formula, and I'm going to move this in a minute so that you can see it. Maybe, hopefully. You can see that. And even if you cannot, I'm about to explain it anyway. So inclusivity is a formula. Oh, thank you so much, Mindy. Inclusivity. Oh, and it's all back to front. I love it when things go to plan. How brilliant. Inclusivity is a formula. And what that formula is when you include people. So the formula is, and I'll come back and explain this. I'll bring this back here. I apologise, that wasn't all planned because it's all back to front. I love it. But inclusivity is where we give the people or give other people the opportunity to take on a level of responsibility. You can see it perfectly. Oh, how good, because it's back to front in my screen. So thank you so much, Stephanie. So inclusivity is where we can create an opportunity for somebody to have a level of responsibility. Now what happens, and I'll come back and explain this in full, but what happens when we accept a level of responsibility, magic happens. Because when we choose to be responsible, we automatically choose to have a level of accountability. And I'll give you an example. I've actually been practicing this with these people I've been working with in the last few days. But once we take on a level of accountability, we automatically take on a level of ownership. And once somebody takes on ownership, that equals buy-in. Now, for me personally, when I'm working with a team, I always want to create buy-in from them. I want them to buy into my vision, buy into my dream, buy into the plan, buy into this task or this project or whatever it might be. Now, the reason buy-in happens, how it can all happen, comes back up to that responsibility, accountability section. And over to the side, you might see that you might be able to read this. It says the law of reciprocity. Maybe you've heard of that. Or maybe if you look at that word reciprocity, what does that remind you of besides recipe? But when I look at that, I see that it's similar to the word reciprocal. So if you're not sure what that means, reciprocal is when someone does something, there's a level of exchange. So to give you an example of reciprocity, I'll ask you, has anybody ever, giving and receiving, Beth, absolutely, thank you. So has anybody ever done a favour for you? I'm going to guess that yes, somebody somewhere in your life has done a favour for you. So I'll ask you this. Where someone has done a favour for you, what have you felt back towards that person? If you want to pop that into the comments, yes, you have. Thank you, Katerina. When someone's done a favour, what have you felt back towards that person? Most of the time, we feel that we owe them. We feel there's got to be some exchange because, as a human being, we don't like to feel that we owe other people because that could put us in a vulnerable position. So when someone does us a favour, we want to pay them back in some way. Gratitude, beautiful, giving back, thank you, owe them, yeah, thank you, ladies. So the way the law of reciprocity works in this inclusivity formula is when we allow or we give somebody the opportunity, the gift, to be responsible for something, to support, they will. The law of reciprocity comes into play right there, and that's what creates accountability. Now, what I love about this formula is me personally, in my teachings, in my experience, I don't subscribe to the school of thought where you make somebody accountable. I subscribe to the school of thought where people choose to be accountable. So really quickly, this group that I'm working with, I set them up so I can teach this. And one of the first things I'll ask is, who's the most responsible person in the room? And, someone gets chosen or picked or whatever happens. And I go, could I ask for a favour? And they go, okay. And I deliberately use the word favour. I say, would you be in charge of timekeeping? They go, oh, yep, sure. Okay, great. And then I'll ask the room, what time do you want to have breaks? Could it, give them some time parameters? You choose. So they've chosen. 100% of the time, because I'm terrible at timekeeping, and I apologise, I might be going a little bit over. I'll wrap this up very shortly. 100% of the time, those people will always remind me, there's 10 minutes to the break, or there's 3 minutes to the break, or this or that. I never have to remind them. And I'm working with this group for 5 days. So far, I'm up to day 3. I haven't had to go back to that. Now, the secret here is, rather than say, hey, can you do this, and can you 9:30 or 1:30 or whatever, would you be willing to be responsible for this? And they're going to say yes or no. Now, because I've given them an option, a choice, are you willing to be responsible? You don't have to be. Doesn't matter if you are, but would you be responsible for timekeeping? Yes, I have. Now, as soon as they choose to accept that responsibility, I'm not forcing them, I'm asking, and they've accepted, they will, because of the law of reciprocity, rather than me dictate to them, I've offered them a choice. They automatically take on their own accountability. They hold themselves accountable. This person in my group right now, he's set an alarm so he can keep himself on time to keep me on time. Like, how amazing is that? And he did that straight away. So he's keeping himself accountable. He is owning that responsibility of timekeeping. There's absolute buy-in. So I've done that a few times, and I always do this when I work with people. So the inclusivity formula is one of the best ways to keep your team motivated. But it's all about including them in your plans, including them in their plans, and asking them and giving them an option. And you evoke that law of reciprocity. So I hope that's helped. I hope that's made sense. And if it hasn't, please, I'm happy to answer any questions.